just managed to come here for a very beautiful place. It was very peaceful and clean. Weather, of course, is also wonderful. I feel that I came at the right time, and I'm happy to have this opportunity to meet all of you. How many of you are acquainted with the institution of ISKCON? Please raise your hands. And how many of you are acquainted with the purpose of ISKCON, the mission of ISKCON? Yes, we are trying to impart spiritual knowledge. Okay, spiritual knowledge. What does it actually mean? Spiritual. It actually implies that there is another reality beyond this reality. This is the material nature. This is the nature of matter. And beyond that, there is another nature, which is the nature of spirit. Matter is inert. Matter is dead. Don't you say dead matter? Meaning, matter doesn't have consciousness. Matter doesn't have life. Matter is not living. Matter is dead. Matter is inert. We see many things here made of matter are inert, like this table, this sofa, this carpet, the walls, building. These are all inert matter. But you and I, are we inert or are we living? We are conscious. Although our bodies are made of dead matter, but we are conscious. Now, what actually causes us to be conscious? It's a simple question, and I'm sure everyone has the answer. The presence of the soul. Because of the presence of the soul in this body, the body is alive. And when the soul leaves the body becomes dead. In simple words, the body made of dead matter becomes dead again when the soul leaves the body. It's the presence of the soul that makes the body alive. Now the question is the soul a product of matter, or the soul comes from another reality? What will be the answer? Soul came from another reality. And that reality, that nature is the spiritual nature. So knowledge about that reality, the knowledge about the spirit soul, is the objective, is what we are trying to impart, we are trying to make people aware. And it is actually a common sense thing. Like we say when somebody dies, we say he is gone. Although his body is lying here, we say he is gone. Then who is that he who is gone? Who is that he whose absence makes the body dead? As long as he was here, the body was alive. So the real identity of everyone is actually that spiritual identity. Now any knowledge is actually a matter of information. When we have information, we know. When we do not have the information, we do not know. And informations come from authentic sources. Those sources are the books. Any subject that we want to master, we have to study the books containing those informations. Now, if we want to understand about the spiritual reality, then yes, informations are available. And the books are there. Those books are called scriptures. The scriptures. And in simple words, they are known as the Vedas. Veda is a Sanskrit word, and it actually means knowledge. It stems from the root vid. Vid means to know. And Veda means knowledge. That has been known. And the Vedas are vast, dealing with various topics. But the Vedas have been summarized, or Vedas actually, the knowledge of the Vedas flows in two different branches. One branch is called Upanishad, and the other branch of the Vedas is called Puran. And there are 108 principal Upanishads, and there are 18 Puranas. And these essence of these Upanishads have been presented by the Lord Himself in a book called Bhagavad Gita, or it is also called Gita Upanishad, because it is falling in the branch of Upanishad, Gita Upanishad. And the other branch of the knowledge is called Puran, and the essence of all the Puran is called Srimad Bhagavatam, or Bhagavad Puran, Amala Puran, spotless Puran. So these two books are very, very essential because they are presenting the essence of the Vedic knowledge. It has been summarized through an example. Like Vedas, all the Upanishads have been compared to a cow. Sarva Upanishado Gabo. All the Upanishads have been compared to a cow. And Dogdha Gopalanandana, the cowherd boy Krishna, milked that cow. The cow gives the milk for the sake of the calf. So in this respect, Arjuna is the calf, for whose sake he actually gave the milk. But although the cow gives the milk for the calf, but who drinks the milk of the cow? Human beings. So similarly, this particular milk of that cow of Upanishad is drunk or relished by those who are truly intelligent. And that milk here that's coming from that is nectar. Nectar gives immortality. So wisdom of the Bhagavad Gita gives immortality. Gives us immortality. If we properly comprehend this knowledge, then yes, we become immortal. In a very simple way, I'll come to that. The point here is that the essence of, see here, the entire, all the Upanishads have been compared to a cow. What is the purpose of a cow? Milk. What is the essence of the cow? Milk. Why does the cow give the milk? For the sake of the calf. And it needs a milkman to milk the cow. So Krishna is the milkman, the cowherd boy who milked this cow. And the nectar that came, the intelligent class of people. Sudhi. The word has been expressed here, used here is Sudhi. Su means very much, very, very. And Dhi means intelligence. Those who have very developed intelligence, they drink this milk. Sarvo Upanishado Gabo Dugdha Gopalanandana. Gopalanandana. Cowherd boy. And Vatsya Partha, Arjun is the Vatsa, the calf. And Sudhir Bhokta, individuals with developed intelligence drink this milk, and this is the nectar of Bhagavad Gita. Dugdham Gitamritam Mahat. So, now as I was saying, this knowledge gives us immortality. How? This knowledge makes us understand the difference between the body and the soul. Makes us understand that our actual identity is the spirit soul, not this body. Body is just an external covering. And very systematically, step by step, Krishna actually is giving this knowledge. For example, Krishna is making that point at the beginning of Bhagavad Gita, that just as when the body, when the dress becomes worn out, we change the dress. Similarly, this body is like a dress. Body is not the self. Body is the external covering. The real self is the spirit soul. When we say I, although we tend to indicate that this body is me, but actually this body is not my real identity. Example. All of us had a 5-year-old body at one time. How old was that body? Then gradually the body grew, reached its youth. The body changed with time. Although the body changed, did we change? I, when I was 5, and I that I am today, is the same I or different I? Same I, although the body changed. Biologically also, every 7 years, every single cell of this body changes. The cells with the body that was made with the cells 7 years back, not a single cell from that body is existing in this body today. What does your microbiology say?
It's probably true.
Yeah. So, so the body changes, but in spite of the changing of the body, like, is my 5-year-old body here today? No, it's gone. Today I have a completely different body. But I, when I was 5, and I that I am today, is the same I or different I? Same I. So that is the point Krishna is actually making just in one verse. Krishna is saying, Dehi noshmin jatha dehe kaumaram yovanam jara tatha dehantara praptir dhirastatra namuyati. Just as the body changes from childhood to youth to old age, but in spite of the change of the body, we do not change. Similarly, he is making that point, tatha, meaning similarly, or therefore, when we leave this body, we continue to exist. And we assume we take up another body. Dehantara prapti. The soul transmigrates from one body to another body, just as in this body the soul had been going through different changes, and eventually the soul leaves this body altogether and takes up a new body. Dehantara prapti. It's called dehantara, or transmigration of the soul from one body to another body. Now let's make a simple equation. Soul never dies. We are souls. Therefore, we won't die. Now see how simply immortality has been achieved. So much endeavor is being made to achieve immortality. But no matter how much money they spend, no matter how much research they conduct, they'll never succeed. Because at the very beginning they made a mistake. That is, they're trying to make this body immortal. This body will never be immortal. The body's business is to die. Again, Krishna is making that point. Jatasya hi dhruva mrityur. Anyone who is born is bound to die. That's the absolute truth. Anyone who is born is bound to die. Similarly, he is making another point. Dhruvam janma mritasya cha. Whoever is born, whoever is dead, will also take birth again. That means we'll transmigrate from one body to another body. And what is the secret of this changing of body? Just as when the dress becomes old, we take off that old dress and put on a new one. Similarly, when this body becomes old and uninhabitable, we discard this old body and take on a new one. This principle applies to body, this principle applies to cars, this principle applies to houses. You're living in a house. When the house becomes old, what do? No matter how attached you are to that house, you leave that house and move on to another new one. Now, do you like the prospect of getting a new house instead of an old one? What will be the answer? Yes? Do you like to get a new car instead of an old, dilapidated one? Would you like to have a new body instead of an old, dilapidated one? So, there is no need to be afraid of death. Rather, we should rejoice at the prospect of getting a new body. Most of you are young, you don't have to think about death now. But, when the time comes, yes, we know that is a better opportunity. Instead of an old one, we'll get a new one. So I tell you, this is an ocean of information leading to absolute wisdom. So many informations are there in the Vedas. Should we go a little further?
Yes.
Okay. We have bodies made of matter. Now, matter has matter is composed, or matter has 8 different elements. 8 different elements comprise the material nature. Out of them, 5 are gross and 3 are subtle. 5 gross elements are earth or solid substance, water, liquid substance, fire, air, and ether. Earth, water, fire, air, ether. These are the 5 gross elements, and there are 3 subtle elements. Those 3 subtle elements are mind, intelligence, and false ego. In Sanskrit, man, buddhi, and ahankara. So, this nature is composed of these 8 elements. Out of them, 5 are gross and 3 are subtle. So with these 5 gross elements, we have a gross body, this time. This body is made of actually 5 elements. Like we can see, there is solid substance. About 75 to 80% of this body is liquid, water. There is fire, therefore we have temperature in the body. Air, we are breathing. These air, according to the Vedic understanding, is not just hydrogen and oxygen and carbon dioxide. These airs are 5 different types of airs called prana, apana, samana, vyana, and udana. These 5 airs are conducting all the activities of the body. Prana is holding the soul within the body. Like when we say when the prana nikal gaya hai. When the prana leaves the body, the soul leaves the body. So prana, apana, all the excretions of the body is conducted by the apana vayu, like evacuation, urination, perspiration. These are conducted by apana vayu. Then samana vayu is taking care of the digestive system. Vyana is taking care of the nervous system. And like these are the activities. All these activities are controlled by different airs in the body. Prana, apana, samana, vyana, and udana. So the air, earth, water, fire, air, and ether. Ether, or in Sanskrit, it is called akash. And that is, in simple understanding of that, will be the space in the body. There is the substance, in which everything is actually situated. So these are the 5 elements. With these 5 elements, this body has been made. But beyond that, we have another body composed of our mind, composed of our intelligence and false ego. False ego, these are all matter. Mind is matter, intelligence is matter. And false ego, meaning the thing that gives us to think, that then makes us think that this body is me, is called false ego. It's also a substance, a subtle matter. So with these 3 subtle elements, we have a subtle body. The easy way to understand the existence of the subtle body is through, like when we fall asleep, like, so when we're awake, our gross body is active, this body is active, and our subtle body consisting of mind is also active. But when you fall asleep, we are not aware of this body. We're totally unconscious about this body. But when we dream, we have certain identity, we have certain body, right? That body is actually made of these three subtle elements, or you can say the subtle body. When we die, we leave the gross body. Subtle body doesn't die. The subtle body carries the soul to the next body. And the way we act, our actions leave their imprints on the subtle body. For example, when you do something good, how do you feel internally? How do you feel in your mind? You feel elated, you feel joyful. But when you do something bad, even though no one saw you doing that, how do you feel? So this is how our actions leave their impressions in our subtle bodies. And accordingly, the subtle body takes its shape. Sometimes don't we say that he is like an angel? What does it mean? His activities are like that of an angel. And those activities are shaping his subtle body like that of an angel's. Sometimes we say that he's like an animal because his activities are like that of an animal. And his subtle body accordingly takes the shape of an animal's. And when one leaves his body, according to the shape of his subtle body, Mother Nature puts him in an appropriate womb. And that is how we actually transmigrate from one body to another. But the ultimate consideration is actually to even become free from the subtle body. Subtle body doesn't die. Actually, death comes with a good opportunity to free us from this bondage. But because we have the subtle body, we cannot become free because it's going to take us to our next destination, which has already been designed. So now the question is, subtle body doesn't die, then how do we get rid of the subtle body? Subtle body doesn't die, but the subtle body can be transformed. Subtle body can be spiritualized. Like with the mind, when we think about Krishna, Krishna is saying in Bhagavad Gita, Man mana bhavo, with your mind you think of me. So with our minds, when we think of Krishna, the mind is transformed mind is spiritualized. In this way, when we become constantly absorbed in thinking about Krishna or serving Krishna, then Krishna is saying in Bhagavad Gita that he gives us the spiritual intelligence. Dadami buddhi yogam tam tesham shatata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam. Those who are rendering loving devotional service unto me constantly, I give them spiritual intelligence. So this is how intelligence is spiritualized. And in this way, when one becomes completely engaged in serving Krishna, then his identity is transformed as Krishna's eternal servant. And that is his spiritual identity. So this is how the subtle body is transformed, or subtle body is spiritualized. So at that stage, it's a pure spirit soul dwelling in this apparently gross body. No subtle body, pure spirit soul. That stage is called Jivan Mukta stage, liberated stage. Even though one is in this body, material body, but he is liberated, mukta, from material bondage. Iha yasya harer dasi karmana manasa gira nikhilasya vyavasthasu jivan mukta savachate. In this way, when one becomes harer dasi, the servitorship to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his karmana, all his activities, manasa, the activities of his mind, and gira, his speech, are engaged in serving the Lord all the time. Nikhilasya vyavasthasu, in all circumstances, doesn't matter in whichever situation he is in, Jivan Mukta Savachate. Although he is apparently in this body, gross body, he is liberated. Because the pure spirit soul is residing in this apparently gross body. And then this gross body, this body is actually a gift of nature. So we have to wait for nature's arrangement. Nature gave us a body, and the Mother Nature will decide when we'll be freed from this body. So when the time comes, that means when the time comes to leave the body, leaves the body and goes back to the spiritual world. And actually that should be the goal of human life, all human beings. Human life comes with an opportunity to understand and recognize our spiritual identity, recognize the Supreme Personality of Godhead, recognize our relationship with Him, and become situated in that relationship. That is the ultimate goal. And when we successfully assume and experience and achieve that goal, then the life becomes successful in a true sense. All our material accomplishments, no matter how successful we are, we have to leave behind at the time of death. Not a single achievement will go with us after we leave this body, because all those achievements were in relation to this body. So when you leave this body, you have to leave everything behind. Our bank account, our bank balance, our degree, our reputation, our position, everything we have to leave at the time of death. The only thing that will go with us is our relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, it has been advised time and time again, labdha sudurlabhamidam bahusam bhavanti. After many, many possibilities that you have got this human form of life, take full advantage of it. Because there is no guarantee for how long this body will last. Death may come at any moment. So take full advantage of this wonderful opportunity that we got in this human form. So that should be the goal of life. Thank you all very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, our dear spiritual master, by whose mercy we have been able to speak whatever we have. Does anybody have any question? Please feel free to ask. Yes?
I
Good point. Yeah, apparently the quality changes according to our mentality. Mind's influence is there. As I said, the subtle body is actually giving the shape to our consciousness. Right? The identity, the soul's, you see, our identity is in our consciousness. And our consciousness is being affected by our subtle body, the way we acted. Right? And that way you can consider that there is change, but that change is taking place in the subtle body, not in the soul. Soul is the source of consciousness. That is spiritual. Like say for example, the light is coming. If we consider our consciousness is like light, now the medium that it is passing through, the light is taking up that color. So similarly, our consciousness is being, affected by our mentality, our subtle body, which have been designed by our previous activities.
So like, if I was not spiritual a few years ago and now I am, and I might be more spiritual a few years later,
yes,
or in the next lifetime, or not be spiritual. So I'm carrying that quality. And isn't my soul carrying that also?
Good question. See, the answer to that is, the more spiritual you become, the more material aspect you discard. Right? That is, like more spiritual you become, closer you get to the spiritual reality. And that way further you go away from the material. Like what actually happens, you develop your attachment to the spiritual aspect, and automatically you become detached from your material attachments. So, yes, so as we make spiritual, therefore, see, on the other hand, let's put it this way. If we're oblivious of our spiritual identity, we become completely absorbed with our material aspect. We think that this body is everything, and the enjoyment of this body is what really matters. But the more we move towards the spiritual direction, the more we become free from that mentality. So, yes.
So it looks like the soul needs a mind and an intelligence to decide what is its goal. So the soul is a part of the Supreme Almighty. So why does it need a mind and a soul to decide what its goal is?
Very good. You see, mind is the medium through which the consciousness of the soul is being projected into this material direction. You get the point? See, the soul is there. The consciousness is coming from the soul. And through the mind, it is being projected through our senses, through the body, and it is through our sense perception that is going out. But the soul in itself should not be involved in that. Mind is what is actually causing us to get entangled in this material nature. Therefore, you see, like we have 5 senses, right? Eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and touch. So all the senses are actually the nervous system, nerve endings. In some nerves are ending in the eyes, some nerves are ending in the brains, and some nerves are ending in the skin, and so forth. And all these nervous system through the spinal cord, it is coming into the brain center. Brain center is the seat of the mind. So therefore, the mind has been considered to be the internal sense. We have 6 senses, 5 external and 1 internal. And all these senses are converging into the mind. And mind is the medium through which the consciousness is being projected. And that is how we become entangled in this material nature. Therefore, to spiritualize the mind, we have to actually reverse the process. Instead of letting the consciousness flow through the mind, we reverse it and project the consciousness back to the source of all consciousness. That is the Supreme Personality of God in Krishna. And there lies out the perfection of our existence. Make sense? Yeah. Thank you. Yes.
So how much should the external senses help to purify the mind?
Oh, very good. Very good. Yeah. So the external senses, in one hand, is the culmination of the projection of our consciousness. Now, when we use our external senses in the service of Krishna, then the activities, instead of being projected externally towards the objects of the senses, is being projected back to the source of all consciousness, that is Krishna. So that is why, all our senses should be engaged in serving the Lord. And there lies the perfection of the existence.
So the second question comes that the senses, you purify the senses, then you purify the mind, or the two separate processes?
The thing is, you see, the means here is also the goal. The means is using the senses in the service of Krishna. And the service of Krishna is the goal of our existence. So by being engaged in serving Krishna, we are purifying our senses, or spiritualizing our senses. And when the senses become spiritualized, then also we continue to serve Krishna. So the engagement of the senses in serving Krishna, let me just quote the verse from Bhagavad Gita. Rishikena Rishikesha Shevanam Bhakti Uchyate. Rishik means the senses. Rishikena means by the senses. Rishikesha, Lord of the senses, meaning who is the source of all consciousness. If Krishna is considered to be the sun, then we all are like the rays of the sun. Qualitatively we are one with, like sun has heat and light, we also have heat and light, but we are minute, sun is absolute. So when we project our activities of the senses, which is actually the product of our consciousness, in serving Krishna, then we are actually establishing our relationship, a link with Krishna. One example, you are looking at with the sun at your back. Will you see the sun? What will you see? You'll see your own shadow. So that's what happens. Our material existence is something like that. Because we turned our back towards Krishna, we are not seeing Krishna, we are seeing the reflection of our material identity. But when we, through the process of devotional service, through our activities, when we reverse that thing, like through our activities, rendering service to Krishna, what we are doing? We're turning our face towards Krishna. So when we see Krishna, will you see the shadow?
No.
When you see the sun, will you see the shadow? No. So that is how the transformation actually takes place.
But sometimes,
okay.
But sometimes we see that even though we are doing some activity, devotional or any other, mind is still wandering everywhere. So how to control senses together with the mind.
Keep on practicing. Keep on practicing. And the thing is that, our mood is something like, we found the way. How long it will take, we don't care. But what we're concerned about, that we stay on this path and never leave. Let it take how much it is. And ultimately it's up to Krishna. You see, the problem is that our senses are being dragged towards the material directions, and we are automatically becoming allured by all these allurements of the material nature. But if Krishna wants, he can just stand in front of us and say, here I am, and material nature will automatically disappear. So therefore we just leave it up to him whenever he will want. Yes, you have a question.
Thank you for the wonderful class. So Maharaj, you mentioned that the prana carries the soul to the next body. So I was wondering, this prana which is material, how it carries
Not
something
the prana.
spiritual.
Prana vayu is keeping the soul in the body. But it's the subtle body that will carry, not the prana actually. Subtle body, comprised of mind, intelligence and false ego.
But the subtle body is also material, so it is carrying something spiritual.
Yeah.
So, general conception of carry is that, let's say you have a small flower and you put it in a big box, but then material means something which is limited by time and space, and spiritual is something which is not bound by time and space.
That is one example. Another example can be a nuclear reactor inside a nuclear bomb. Is it inside or outside? Which is more powerful, right? It is the ICBM, intercontinental war, is carrying the nuclear reactor, right? It is, sometimes, more powerful thing can be inside of something. So similarly, the soul is there and is being carried. It's not something that materially you carry on your head, right, or in your hand. It is the kind of the soul has been trapped, let's put it this way. Soul has been trapped in this material nature. And that entrapment has got two functions or two aspects. One is the gross aspect and the other is the subtle aspect. The gross aspect is this one. But the subtle aspect, when it is free from the gross aspect, it carries the soul according to its destination. It's not being carried out by his own whims. Mother Nature is arranging it according to the person's activities. When one acts, therefore there is a consideration. Right activity is called punya, piety, and wrong activity is called pap or sin. So you act in a wrong way, you are destined to suffer. You act in the right way, you will enjoy. So in this material nature, according to one's activity, one is actually generating his or creating his destiny or future. But that is also temporary. That's also undesirable. What is really desirable is to become totally free from both gross and subtle body and go back to the spiritual reality in the spiritual body, with the spiritual body. All right?
Thank you.
Yes?
Thank you, Prabhuji, for a very nice lecture. You mentioned that consciousness, through the mind, into the senses, and we experience this material world. So I have two parts, two questions. One is, what's the best way to reverse those searchlights so that you can experience the higher consciousness? And two is, during sleep, we actually do that. We turn off our senses. So why is it that we don't experience that higher level of consciousness?
Okay. The first question is, how do we reverse it? Right? The way to reverse it is by, being. See, let's look at it in two ways. In this way, there are two sides of it. One is the material side, the other is the spiritual side. The material side causes us entanglement, which eventually leads to suffering. So we don't want to suffer. So the best way to do that is by moving towards the spiritual direction. Like, this is the world of suffering, that is the world of joy. So that's why the intelligent thing is to move towards that direction. Now the way to move towards that direction is to develop our attachment to the center of that reality, who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, God. God is the center. So in order to go into that direction, we have to develop our relationship with Him. Right? So the way to do it is by, as I mentioned, with our words, with our actions, and with our speech. We have to be engaged in His service. Our activity should be rendered in order to please Him. Our thoughts should be engaged in thinking about Him and His wonderful activities, His wonderful nature, His wonderful qualities. And our speeches should be engaged in glorifying Him. So when we do that, we will move towards that direction. Like, actually in his question, I made that point. Like, two directions. One is our back towards the sun, if we take that example. Another one is looking towards the sun. When we have our back towards the sun, do we see the sun? No. We see our shadow, which is the absence of the sun actually. And in the material nature, that shadow is this gross body and the subtle body. So when the activities of the gross body and subtle body is projected towards the Lord, then what happens? We keep on moving towards Him. And when we move towards Him and when we see Him, then there is no more shadow. At least we don't see our shadows. So the best way to move towards Him is by just being engaged in serving Him, glorifying Him, and thinking about Him. And as your second question is, like, the gross body, you see, it is not that always we are dreaming the pleasant dreams. Isn't it? Sometimes we have nightmares also. So not that all the dreams are elevating us. Like, and the dreams are actually ultimately is the projection of our involvement. The way we thought, the way we acted at the time of dream, they are projected in the forefront of our mind, and we get involved in that. That's what the dreams are. Therefore, the best way is to be, when you become engaged in, again, be engaged in serving the Lord, thinking about the Lord, and speaking about the glories of the Lord, then, we become free from that entanglement, or we become spiritualized. And in the spiritual consciousness, then we do not experience, then it's not a projection of our material experiences or that are stored in our memory. Then we directly deal or relate to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which, is a kind of transcending this reality and entering into another reality. transcending both the gross body and the subtle body. Is it clear? Thank you. Okay.
Maharaj, thank you for the next class. Just a continuation of the same question. The desires that the soul has to enjoy is projected either through the senses or the mind or intelligence or the ego, right? So as we are trying to be Krishna conscious or spiritual, then more of our desires are trying to be towards finding pleasure through serving Krishna. But at the same time, is it a linear progress gradually from the desires being on the mental platform or sense platform there? Or is it a tipping point at some point as we practice over the years? Or is it like a gradual process where, how do we gauge ourselves, how we were last year versus this year versus sometime in the future? Or at some point, do we just, does a scale tip over? Or like, how, do we assess ourselves? Should we assess ourselves?
You see, okay, the process, I'll go straight to the point. The process is devotional service, bhakti. The bhakti has two aspects. Sadhana bhakti and prema bhakti. Sadhana bhakti is the practicing stage. We are practicing. But the practice will lead to perfection. And when we develop that perfection, then bhakti, which actually means simply it means love towards the Lord, love for the Lord. Bhakti means actually loving devotional service. When the love is expressed through some service, through some activities, that is called bhakti. Sevanam bhakti ruchyate. Karmana manasa gira nikhitna sevanam bhakti ruchyate. The service to the Lord is called bhakti, which means actually an expression of our love. So first we are practicing, but as through the practice we develop perfection, or you can say spiritual maturity, then it will automatically happen. We'll spontaneously feel the love for the Lord. And it has different stages, as you know, Ado Shraddha, Tato Sadhu Sangha, Bhajana Kriya, Anartha Nivritti, Nishtha, Ruchi, Ashakti, Bhav, prema. So gradually it will happen. So let's just continue to practice. We found the way. Right. So let's just carry on. And ultimately, it will happen. And nature will make arrangements. Nature will make arrangements. At the time of death, we will be that, the gateway to that world will open up. And if we engage ourselves throughout our lifetimes, Krishna will bestow His mercy. It's not that, we want to go to Krishna and Krishna doesn't care. Rather, Krishna is more eager to take us back than we are. Example, the son left the father. Son may have forgotten the father, but does the father ever forget him? We may have forgotten Krishna, but our Supreme Father Krishna, can he ever forget us? Now, if the son wants to come back to the father, won't the father make all the arrangements to call him back, to bring him back? So that is how eager Krishna is to take us back to the spiritual world. Only thing is that Krishna is waiting when you are going to be fed up with this material nature and sincerely develop your desire to come back to me. As long as you have desire to enjoy this material, just stay here. That's Krishna's condition. When we are sincere, then Krishna will make all the arrangements. And didn't Krishna make all the arrangements? You came to the path, you found the way, you committed, you recognized the value of it, committed yourself to it. Just carry on with complete faith in Him. Thank you, Hare Krishna. You have a question?
Maharaj, you mentioned two things in the beginning, Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. Now, you focus on Bhagavad Gita mostly, essence of Bhagavad Gita. So what's the other part, Srimad Bhagavatam part?
Bhagavad Gita is the basic teachings. Through Bhagavad Gita we are learning, the first thing we are learning, the difference between body and soul. Then we are recognizing who Krishna is, that he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then we are recognizing how to develop our relationship with him. And then finally, Bhagavad Gita is Krishna saying, you surrender unto me. So there Bhagavad Gita ends. And then Srimad Bhagavatam begins. Krishna says, you surrender unto me. And Bhagavad Gita begins with, when you surrender unto me, then what will happen? So that is what Srimad Bhagavatam. When you surrender unto Krishna, then what will happen? You get to know who he is. You get to see what his... first of all, you recognize, how wonderfully he arranged everything. What an amazing way he created everything. In an amazing way he is maintaining everything. Then you get to see how Krishna is taking care of this material nature by dealing with the miscreants and the saintly ones. So actually the miscreants and saintly ones have a natural conflict. Not that the saintly people want to conflict, but the miscreants want to trouble them. Krishna comes in to take care of them. Annihilate the demons, protect the devotees. Then Krishna shows how he cares for his devotees, how much he loves his devotees, and how much he wants to enjoy with his devotees. That is what Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay, so I will stop now. Thank you all very much.